Hi, this is Dave. In today's podcast, I want to give you some economic measurements. These are sophisticated measurements that I have developed over the years that will give you the information you need to make a significant improvement in your sales force and your sales system. So if you got a sales system or you're interested in building your business, this is for you. If not, it's okay. You know, over my career as a sales expert, I've personally and contractually worked with over 500 sales organizations. And in that time, I've learned some things, and here's one. Very few chief sales officers, let me stop a minute. A chief sales officer is whoever is making the decisions, ultimately the decisions for the sales system and or the sales force. Very few chief sales officers have a good handle on the economics of the sales force. And very few entrepreneurs think about the economics of a sales system. Almost everyone can tell you what the amounts of various categories on a P&L statement indicate. So, for example, sales salaries, expenses, advertising costs, etc. are all readily at hand. However, very few decision makers dig deeper. And that means that significant information is never uncovered, and decisions are made on the basis of superficial and often flawed information. So if you can make decisions about your sales force, or if you manage your sales system, you'll need a deeper understanding of the economics of certain sales efforts to make wise decisions going forward. So I'm going to share with you a couple of the measurements that we have created over the years that have really given our clients a leg up on creating an effective sales system and managing an effective sales force. So the first measurement is something I call Kahle's calculation. Boy, we've been doing this, oh my goodness, for maybe 30 years. So Kahle's calculation is, unfortunately, there's only a handful of sales leaders who really understand the concept of sales productivity. So this Kahle's calculation speaks to sales productivity. One way to define productivity is to compare the cost of a unit of labor versus the output. Now, it's an important measurement for every other job title. For example, an order entry clerk who inputs 100 lines an hour is more productive than one who inputs 80 lines, at least on the surface. If, however, the 100-line person costs you $50 an hour and the 80-line person costs you $25 an hour, the equation changes dramatically. Now, by driving down a bit deeper, we discover that the 100-line person costs you 50 cents per line, while the other costs you 31 cents a line. So, in business, productivity is measured by the output per dollar of cost. Got it? Okay. Now, when we apply that to sales forces, it takes the form of something we call Kahle's calculation of sales productivity. It's a formula I created decades ago to measure sales productivity. And by the way, we have a free download of an ebook that talks about it with spreadsheets and so on. And I'll put the link in the show notes. It's free, a free download of that Kahle's calculation ebook. Basically, we compare all the direct cost of a salesperson, and that is their wages and their fringes and their expenses, etc., all the direct costs to the gross profit produced by that salesperson in that same period of time. So having arrived at those two numbers, we then divide the total gross profit, which is hopefully the bigger number, into the total cost. And the result is a percentage, point something. And that percentage is a measurement of the productivity of a salesperson. So here's a quick example. Let's say salesperson Susan produced a total gross profit in her territory of $560,000 last year. She cost the company $102,000. Her productivity measurement is 18.2%. Now, you can check that all out, work it out if you'd like. But we're dividing the total cost of the person by the total gross profit that person produced in that period of time. We're getting a percentage as a result. Now that you have that measurement, you can also use that information to inform your management decisions in a number of different ways. So here's some different ways to use it. Number one, compare the Kahle's calculation number to a set of benchmarks that we've created. So we know for a business-to-business salesperson, the acceptable Kahle's calculation range is ideally under 20%, specifically 13 to 19%. So a salesperson who costs you 25%, Kahle's calculation, is probably not profitable. Regardless of how much gross profit he or she produces, the ratio of cost to gross profit just does not allow enough to pay all the other costs of running the business and produce a profit. So this gives you a more accurate and specific measurement that will allow you to make informed decisions about individual salespeople so that you can work with them individually to improve their productivity. So that's one way to use Kahle's calculation. Compare an individual salesperson to our benchmarks. Here's another. Compare one sales team with another. Now you can modify the measurement a bit, and again see the ebook to give you some more information on that. You can create a measurement of the productivity of a sales team, not just one individual, but a team. And you then compare one team with another to discover best practices and make changes. Now, this is particularly helpful if you have branches, as many wholesale distributors do, and the salespeople within each branch. You can compare one branch to another, or you can more closely analyze, let's say, a specialist sales team by looking at the Kahle's calculation for the team. That's number two. Number three, you can modify the number a bit and measure the productivity of the entire sales and marketing system for the company. So again, read the ebook and tell you how to measure the productivity of your company. Not any part of it, but the whole thing. So our benchmarks indicate that if you're under $20 or $30 million in annual sales, your Kahle's calculation at the company level should be 26 to 34%. And as you grow in size, it should be incrementally smaller as you get advantages of scale. If your Kahle's calculation at the system level is 40%, for example, you are not as profitable as you could be because your sales system is inefficient. On the other end of the spectrum, if your Kahle's calculation at the corporate level is too low, let's say 18%, you're probably not growing as rapidly as you should because you are not investing adequately in the sales function. Now, at this level, at the corporate level, discrepancies are generally due to sales system issues rather than personnel issues. Maybe your compensation plan is flawed, or your system of account responsibility is ineffective, or you're calling on the wrong markets or using the wrong sales approach, etc., etc. So that's three different ways you can use Kahle's calculation. It really is such an incredibly useful number that I recommend every one of my clients put it into a system and review it on a regular basis. Let the computer push it out to you and review it as a regular basis. That's number one. Here's another measurement that most people never think of, but is incredibly useful, and that is the productivity of a sales call. Now, using Kahle's calculation, we can determine the productivity of a salesperson, but with just a little more thinking, we can ferret out some numbers that will tell us a great deal more about the situation by using them to discern the quality of a sales call. So let's think a minute about the potential productivity of a sales call. It's just a simple measurement of the total cost of the sales call compared to the total potential gross profit of that call. So to create the total cost of a sales call, you take the salesperson's direct cost, which you have previously done, and then divide that by the number of sales calls made by that person in that period of time. And, this number will vary greatly on the industry. The last numbers I have seen indicate that it's probably going to be Cost of an individual sales call will probably be between $125 and $300 per call. That's for a business-to-business sales call. Finding that number is often an eye-opener for sales leaders, just that number alone. What does it cost you? What does it cost the company to have a salesperson make a sales call? But more important than the cost of the sales call is the potential productivity of that call. And while potential is a slippery number to acquire, we can create some standards to help us make better decisions. For example, keep in mind that a salesperson should cost the company no more than 20% of the gross profit. So the ratio of cost to profit is 1 to 5. Are you with me? That's 20%. So if a sales call costs us $200, we must then produce 5 times that in gross profit to make that call profitable. So a $200 sales call that produces $1,000 in gross profit costs you 20%. And there's that 20% number again. So at this point, the blood is draining from the faces of most sales leaders and salespeople reading the post. Oh my goodness, some of you are thinking, we're spending a lot of time on customers and calls that aren't worth it. Let me repeat that. Oh my goodness, some of you are thinking, we're spending a lot of time on customers and calls that aren't worth it. Yep, that's right, you are. One of the biggest flaws in the design of most sales forces is to allow the salespeople to waste time on accounts that will never be profitable. It's so common, it's a universal malady. Now, you can use this set of economics to focus the investment of sales time on profitable accounts. For an example, an account with $10,000 in potential gross profit may be only worth 1 or 2 sales calls, while an account with $4 million in potential gross profit could be seen every week. And while there are lots of potential responses to these numbers, it does bring us to one of the rules for 21st century sales system design, and that is you match the sales system to the dynamics and potential of the account. For example, it may cost you $1,000 to have a salesperson call on a low-volume account. However, you can cut that investment dramatically by creating a sales system of 5 or 6 proactive outbound sales calls made by an inside salesperson, coupled, with a set of attractive product descriptions or web pages. So your attention should not be just directed to the small end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, you are probably not investing sufficiently in the highest potential accounts. Now, if the potential is significant, then having just an outside salesperson call on them is insufficient. Remember this refrain: match the sales system to the dynamics and potential of the account. An account with huge potential ought to be invested in more heavily. Sales calls by executives, significant entertaining events, company visits, these should all be part of the process for high potential accounts. So here's one more measurement that will again provide you information to help you make better decisions and create a better sales force. And that is something I call QPC. QPC. That's an acronym, stands for Quantified Purchasing Capacity. QPC is the answer to this question. Quote, if this account bought everything they could from me in the next 12 months, of all the categories of stuff that I sell, if they bought everything from me that they could, how much would that be? That is the measure of QPC, the answer to that question. Let me repeat it. if this account bought everything they could from me in the next 12 months, how much would that be? Again, the answer to that is a number. Now, lots of people think in terms of an account's potential, but often those ideas are vague and imprecise. And, a salesperson will say, oh, yeah, it's pretty big. Because the measurement is based on a specific set of criteria. Our QPC measurement provides a quantifiable measurement that can be used to compare one account with another to determine the investment you make in sales to capture that potential. This is one of my pet peeves. When we think about collecting information about a potential customer, once we get beyond the demographics, like say name, address, type of business, what would be the most important piece of information we should collect about every prospect and every customer? Would it not be how much can they buy? In other words, their QPC. And yet, in over 500 sales organizations that I have worked with, how many do you think before I got there, had an understanding of QPC, had a requirement that salespeople collected, had a field on their CRM system to input it? How many do you think out of 500 had that in place before I got there? The answer is one. One. So the measurement is incredibly powerful, that it can touch multiple sales issues. For example, just collecting the number and attaching it to an account, just that alone can be powerful all by itself if you never do anything with it. Because the average salesperson sees a verifiable number of an account's potential. And honestly, from my experience, that number is almost always larger than the salesperson had anticipated. The actual potential in a customer can motivate a salesperson all by itself. Just collecting the number can be a stimulant for greater sales. But you can do more. In addition, you can use that number to determine one half of our rule, and the rule is match the sales system to the dynamics and potential of the account. Remember that? So QPC goes a long way to determining the potential of the account. So you can precisely create and match a sales approach. You cannot precisely create and match a sales approach unless you know the account's QPC. It also takes the measurement of penetration into the 21st century. Now it is no longer a matter of, I think we're getting X percentage of the business, which is a vague, subjective response to what is our penetration. It provides, our QPC number provides an objective measurement. So if the account has $100 million in potential purchases, and you're getting 50,000, your penetration is pretty low. So there's three measurements that, frankly, most sales forces and sales systems never even think about, which I use in my work as a sales consultant, that will give you the information to make decisions that will dramatically impact your sales system. Okay? That's it. We're done. Bye-bye.